Hi, this is Lou, welcome to my channel. And on this channel we draw and paint and play with colour and line and form. I'm going to be spending a couple of weeks working with botanical patterns, and today's is all about leaves, making them in different shapes and sizes and creating interesting patterns on the page with them. So I hope you'll join me. So today again I'm working in watercolour, and I've got my little palette with some colours that I've already been playing with. I've been using the same kind of colours for the last few weeks for all the different projects I've been working on. And these are the colours I've got. So I'm working with pinks, so I've got Permanent Rose and Potter's Pink. And then I've got some supporting colours. These are colours that I'm going to mix into the pinks to make them look a little bit different, a little bit interesting. This warm yellow is Raw Sienna. This is Pthalo Turquoise. And this is Buff Titanium. For today's project I'm going to be focusing more on kind of mauvey purpley colours. So I'm going to be using the Pthalo Turquoise mixed with the pinks a little bit more than the yellows. I'm still going to use them, but just focusing more on getting kind of some nice pinky purpley colours. And if you watch Tuesday's video, you'll see that I've been practicing drawing leaf shapes in pencil in my sketchbook and working out some kind of individual stems of leaves in line and wash. And I'm going to be using these as inspiration today, but what I'm really going to be doing is working out some really simple patterns of leaves and seeing what they look like at different scales and how the patterns look different when you make them in different ways. So I've got some watercolour paper torn to size that I'm going to be using for my patterns. So these are going to be standalone pieces that just work on the page. I'm not going to be showing you today how these patterns repeat, but I will be showing you that in a video very, very soon. But before that, I've got a much cheaper piece of paper here, and I'm going to do some practicing. Now, one of the reasons I'm practicing is that I've got some brand new paint brushes. These are Princeton Neptune brushes in round in 4 and 10, and this is a brand I've not used before, so they just handle a little bit differently, and I want to see what the differences are between those and the brushes that I usually use, which are the Pro Arte Prolene brushes. So let's take the number 10 to start with, and I'm just going to get some water into the pans of paint on my palette. And just bring that into this nice flat area, and I'm just creating little puddles of these colours, and then I'm allowing them to overlap and blend, so I get lots of interesting kind of in-between tones. So I've got the pink and the yellow kind of here, and when I mix them together I'll get a kind of nice kind of peachy pinky colour, and I can use that to start practicing and drawing lines and leaf shapes on this this piece of paper. So if I bring colour into different areas, I can get different tones, and I'm generally not washing my brush in between going into these different areas. I want all of those kind of sort of muddy colours really. And what I'm finding is already I'm liking this brush. So I'm creating some really simple patterns of leaves here. Leaves on a stem. So use the point of my brush to draw a nice fine stem. Takes a little bit of wrist control, but a little bit of practicing and you can get a nice fine line. Then picking up a slightly different colour on my brush, again going in with a point and just pressing it down and lifting it up. And you can kind of neaten it up if you want to, but I don't mind a few kind of raggedy edges. I'm going into a slightly different area of colour, and then push my brush down, and I can kind of drag it back a little bit and then lift it up. And I get this kind of puddle of dark colour here, and then it's lighter there. You can smooth that all out if you want to, but I'm just going to leave it I think today. See how it looks. So those have come out quite nicely. What I want to do is show you the contrast with a different brush. I'm going to use this brush here, which is my Pro Art brush. This one's a size 7. This is a size 10 brush, that's a size 7, so there will be a difference there. But I'm going to use exactly the same action, the same method, and see how different my leaves and stems look. So let's try these ones up here. So already I can tell that my stem line is not quite as thin or delicate as these ones, but it's got a little bit more kind of pigment sitting in it, so it'll probably stay wet for longer. And then press down and lift up with my brush. And with this one I end up with more of like an oval shape. It's maybe not so obvious with this shape here. Let's get a bit more of a colour. Let's mix up a nice kind of dark purple mauvey colour. So point of my brush against the stem, press down and lift up. And yeah, definitely more of like an oval shape, whereas these are kind of definitely got a point and then it's rounded at the end. So just with that one movement, I'm getting a much different shape leaf here. So can you see the difference? Just with the different size and different kind of brand of brush. I mean, they're both round brushes, they're both pointed. That one comes to a much finer point, I think, which allows you to get these really fine lines. But this one seems to pick up a lot more paint and pigment. So I'm getting kind of stronger colours, and I find it easier to move the colour from the pan onto the palette with this brush than this one. So I've played around and practiced with this brush with this new brush for a little bit, and that's given me a sense of how it functions that's different to the ones that I already have. And you wouldn't think there was that much difference between two brushes, but actually the effects that you can get are quite different. So I couldn't say that any one of these brushes was better or worse. They're just different, and they'll be useful for different things. But for leaves, I'm really enjoying the shape of these ones. There's something really, really satisfying about that kind of rounded shape that I'm getting with this. So I'm going to put this one down and carry on with this nice big fat round 10 brush. I want to see what kind of different shaped leaves I can get as well. So I'm going to experiment with drawing out some long thin ones and lifting the brush up as I kind of pull it away. And I can add another one next to that. And maybe put in one here. So yeah, these long thin ones are quite nice and quite satisfying. And then let's turn this around so I can use a different part of it. Let's make some really big ones. So I'm pressing down as far as I can and then lifting up again. And that will make one half of a leaf. And then let's grab another colour and make another half of a leaf on the other side. There we go. I've got a little bit of a white gap in there, but I'm quite liking that. I'm going to carry on and making these big leaves here. So one side, grab another colour, put in another side there. And then let's just use the tip of the brush and drag those together and join them somewhere. Obviously the size of the leaf that you'll be able to make depends on the size of the brush that you've got. So let's try the same thing with this number 4 brush and see about making those same kind of double-sided leaves with this smaller brush. Put in some stems and join all those together. And that's quite nice as well. what about like a eucalyptus, like a round eucalyptus leaf? How would I do that? So that's kind of going across the stem. Let's have one coming off the stem here. And then that needs a partner. So there. Let's put one across the stem again. And then one behind it. That one there. I'm going to continue this stem up here because that's going to be quite fun. Let's put some little ones on the top. So with the eucalyptus leaves, they come off in pairs from the central stem, but they come off at all sorts of different angles. So some of them will go in front of the stem and some behind. So it's just about kind of breaking that up and making them kind of look different as they go down. So I think that's enough practicing for now. So I'm going to take my favourite of these and make a whole page of one type of leaf in a particular pattern. So I'm going to do 3 patterns. One's going to be an all over pattern, so the pattern pieces kind of point off in all sorts of different directions. Another pattern is going to be a directional pattern, so all of the elements kind of point in one direction. And then another one is going to be a trailing pattern, so there'll be stems kind of trailing across the page and leaves coming off it. So I've got here some watercolour paper that I've just torn down to size. I'm working fairly small, and sometimes I tape the paper down to the table, but with these I find it's really useful to be able to rotate them, so I'm not going to do that today. So for my first pattern I'm going to do stems with these kind of oval shaped leaves on, and I'm using the size 10 brush. So I'm going to start again by putting the tip of my brush down on the paper and drawing out a nice fine stem. And then putting the point at the top of the stem and just pressing my brush down. I'm drawing it back a little bit, but not too far, and then lifting it up. And then I'll go into a slightly different area of colour on the palette without really washing my brush. So I've got some of that original colour on and then some of the one that's kind of next to it. And I can just point my brush down and lift it up, and I get that kind of nice burst of colour. And if at any stage, if you want your leaves to be really neat, you can just use the tip of the brush to neaten them up. And like in this area here where I had this kind of yellowy muddy colour there, I haven't washed my brush and I've still got that pink on it. Because it's nice and wet still, I'll get an interesting kind of blend in those areas. I'm going to angle this leaf up a little bit so that it collides with this one next to it, so that sometimes I'll have gaps between different areas and sometimes I won't. And I'm just angling my wrist and my brush to decide where I want these leaves to go. Let's do another couple, maybe smaller ones, so I'm just not pressing down as hard on this end. And there we go. So I've got one nice stem of leaves. I want this page to be full of these leaves going off in all sorts of different directions. So I don't want to start the second one kind of going in the same direction. The easiest way to do that is to turn my page a little bit. So I can do one maybe down here. If I did one here, then I could end up with a kind of radiating out of a point. I don't really want that either. So let's just pick this line here. And so it's at a different angle to the one I've already drawn. and I'm going to start adding my leaves to this one in exactly the same way. So I'm going to fill this whole page with leaves. What I want to do is kind of fill the centre, but then I could have some going off the edge as well. So I'll fill the kind of the middle bit in, and then I'll kind of work around the edges and get those kind of so the whole page looks nice and full and complete. For my second pattern, I'm going to start with a pen, and I'm going to do a line and wash version of the Leafy pattern. I'm going to use the same watercolours as I've done in the other one, but I'm going to start by drawing the pattern out with a pen. And actually I think I'm going to start with a pencil, just to give me a sense of where I want these to go. So I want this to be a directional pattern, so that means kind of everything's heading in the same direction. So I'm going to start by just drawing some rough lines kind of going up the page. I have 4 of them. There we go. And these are going to be my stems, and then my leaves are going to come off this, so I'm just going to put them in kind of roughly, and they are going to be like really long skinny leaves. So I'm just doing this drawing really roughly. And I want to make sure that some of the leaves are overlapping, and then there's not gaps, so any kind of areas at the bottom I'm going to fill in. But all of these leaves are coming off those stems that I drew. And then I can see that there's a bit of a gap down this left hand side, so I'm just going to imagine that there's another stem over there, and you'll be able to see some of the leaves there and maybe a couple there. So I filled really quickly this whole page with just really rough drawings of those kind of long thin leafy shapes. Now I'm moving to a pen, and this is a waterproof pen. It's a Unipin fine line, but any waterproof pen will work. This one's a 0.2, so the line shouldn't be too obvious. I'm going to go over my pencil lines, but I'm going to give the leaves a little bit more definition, and I'm going to draw them with a little bit more care when I go in with the pen. So you can start drawing anywhere, and I'm going to start with this leaf here at the bottom. I'm actually going to bring it up a little bit, so I've got a little bit of stem coming in at the bottom of the page. I'm going to zoom you in a little bit. And then let's draw this leaf in here like that, and then I'm going to put a line in down the centre of the pen, and I'm just pressing a little lighter of that centre line, and then my stem is actually going to be hidden behind that leaf, and there's going to be another leaf coming out here. With this one, what I think I might do is I might twist it. So I've just put like a curve in the top of that leaf. I draw it in the other side of it, and I'm going to bring it up to meet that curve. And then from somewhere about here, I can bring in the other side of the leaf. So it looks like this is the back side of the leaf and that's the front. And I can help that effect by putting in that centre line kind of there. So it looks like I've got a leaf with a nice bit of a twist in it. I've got my stem coming out here. And then there's another leaf here. Now I've got a section where my pencil lines are overlapping, so I've got to decide, is this leaf in front of that leaf or is it behind? I think it might actually be behind. And I can help that sense of it being behind the other leaf by just making it a little bit longer so it sticks out a bit further. So I've got another leaf off to the side here. And with this one, I'm going to give it a sense of kind of having a folded over bit. Again, I've drawn that like kind of curve in, but this time I've just kind of filled in that line there. So let's put in the other side of the leaf there. Let's get it going to a nice fine point. And then I'll put that nice light line up the centre of the leaf. So this leaf here just looks like it's got a kind of a folded over bit on the side. So this one is going to go off the page. And then there's another one coming out here. And then just have the stem going right off the top of the page there. So I'm going to carry on drawing these leaves, making some of them a little bit twisted like this, occasionally putting like a little fold in the side of the leaf, but not doing it too often because I don't want them all to look like that, just occasionally. So for this one, it's really a case of kind of colouring it in. And I'm going to have fun colouring it in, just in different colours and allowing stripes of colour to run through the leaves. And again, I'm not going to kind of paint any one leaf or stem any particular colour. I'm going to let them kind of move and blend. I'm generally going to make the stems a little bit darker than the leaves, so use some more of the blues and purples on the stems and then maybe more of the kind of creamy yellowy colours into the leaves. So I've moved back to my Pro Arte brush for this. I don't need terribly fine lines. I'm going to paint in a little bit of the stem, add a little bit of water onto my brush and allow that to kind of blend out. Now, I don't want too much kind of turquoise in here on its own, so I'm going to start at the top of that leaf with some of that pinky purple and just drag that back down into the turquoise. Now with this you can be as careful as you want to be about whether the paint stays inside the lines or not. You can look good either way, so you can kind of use the lines as a kind of structure and then be a little looser with your paint, or you can be very careful to paint within the lines. It's entirely up to you. So again, a little stripe of purpley blue up one side, and then I'm just going to move to a slightly pinkier colour for the other side of that leaf. Now I've got a little bit on that leaf there, so what I can do is just go in on the leaf next to it and paint in something a little bit different. There we go. So I've got that kind of creamy colour in there, and I'm just going to drop a little bit of the purpley mauvey colour into it. If you want your colours to run between the leaves, then you paint them while they're still wet. If you don't want the colours to run, then you wait for the leaf next to it to dry. I am not going to mind my colours running at all. In fact, I quite like it, so I'm going to encourage them to blend a little bit while all the paint's still wet. So I'm going to carry on painting, just keep painting the stems and the leaves, and I'm going to keep going until the whole thing's finished. For my third pattern, I'm going to try to do something delicate with these little leaves with the little gaps in them. So I've switched to the smaller brush, and I'm going to use the fine point to create some nice fine stems, and I'm going to do these little delicate leaves with the with kind of 2 swipes of the brush. So this one I kind of want to make like a trailing or vining pattern, so that there are stems, but they're undulating. They're not all in one direction, but neither are they completely scattered like the leaves have kind of fallen to the ground. So for this I can start anywhere, and I'm just going to use the tip of the brush and draw a really fine sort of stem that's starting out. So I'm kind of starting in a very similar way that I did with this, and I'm going to fill this with leaves. So 1, 2 sides of the leaf, and I can make it come to a nice fine point if I'd like to. And then I'm going to go and add more leaves onto this branch, and I'm going to alternate them so they're coming off the branch at slightly different points. Oh, I haven't left much of a gap in that one, but that's okay. So each leaf is just made with 2 swipes of the brush. And then I can put one here, and I'm just going to disguise the end of that stem there. And then I'm going to draw it out. So let's draw it out a bit further. The other thing I can do is I can part the stems. So I'll part that one there and start drawing leaves on here. And the aim with this is to keep that stem going. So you're either disguising the end of it, or you're kind of pulling it out again from some point in the branch in a new direction. So now I've got this stem here, I can pull another bit out, so there's a little bit of a gap there, so let's bring out some of that stem here. There we go. And maybe there's a gap there, Or maybe I could come out the end and I'll bring more little bits of stem out that way. So I'd love you to experiment with your brushes and paints and see what different shapes and sizes of leaves you can make, and then make 3 different patterns with the leaves arranged in different ways across the page. Thanks very much for watching today. I really hope that you've enjoyed this. Next week I'm tackling flowers, so I look forward to seeing you then. In the meantime, you can find me over on Instagram. I'm trying to post a little bit more frequently over there, so there'll be a lot more kind of watercolour and pattern inspiration there. And you can find me there at Lou Rachel Davis. So if you liked the video, then please give it a thumbs up, and if you'd like to see more from me, then do subscribe to the channel, and I will see you very, very soon. Bye bye.